Here's this insane, beautiful view. Koh Phangan. Palm trees, endless seas, sand. Oh yeah, life is good.
Sexiness.
Ain't that right?
Don't forget that one.
Oh yeah.
So it's a nice little snuggy McSnug.
Beautiful. Hello.
Hello.
We are talking about abandonment as we sit here in abundance on the fucking beach. What? Yes.
The perfect topic for a beautiful day.
Yeah. Abandonment.
I feel like we're brushing over the surface of gold.
Yeah.
You may be abandoned, but look, we're here.
You're abundant. Yeah. Well,
love
we've done a lot of work to heal that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is what's on the other side.
Whew. On the other side.
Beauty, enjoyment, freedom.
But it is a deep wound. It's the deepest wound that most of us hold, I think.
Absolutely.
And many reasons for many of our protective mechanisms, our layers, our behaviors, our thought patterns.
Yeah, it's all encompassing, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All these weird reactions we have to all of our relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Mine shows up in just daily interactions with people, right?
Yep.
Wanting to be liked, wanting to please, that people-pleasing tendency, wanting to do the right thing so that people go, oh, you're great. In my teaching, wanting to be like, that was the best, you're amazing. Okay, now do I get the approval? Am I worthy now?
And the thing is, as a human being, we can't escape abandonment because it begins the moment we're conceived, and that separation between mother and yourself. It's a part of the natural human cycle. You can't escape it. And depending on how, I wouldn't say healed, but how aware or how much healing the primary caregiver, whether that's your mother, whether it's not, has done, will determine on how big your abandonment wound is. It won't determine if you have one or not. Everyone has an abandonment wound pretty much, if they're aware of it. But how much work or how much healing or unlearning your mother or your primary caregivers have done will determine how little or how big this abandonment wounding is, because it will allow them to soften your separation from the mother or your mother and yourself, and that therefore will shorten or shrink the abandonment wound. And if they've done no healing, it's going to be huge abandonment, unconsciously for the most part. I want to say unconsciously. It's not, most parents are not consciously aware of how they navigate the raising of their children that creates this abandonment wound. For example, we have the good and the bad child, right? You're good, you're good if you do this, you're bad if you do this, or you're wrong or right. And there is no good or bad. That's just the perception of the parent. You're good because they perceive that behavior as good, but it's just a behavior. They've put a meaning to that behavior, and when they say to their child, stop being so angry, or don't you speak to me like that, or how, that's, you start to abandon yourself because you realize you're wrong, and that's where the abandonment wound blossoms.
Yeah.
Like a little tree with many branches.
And there's so much that we're unconscious of that is still abandonment, like our emotional abandonment, not being acknowledged or having how you're feeling swept under the rug. Like, you're okay.
Yes.
Like, stop crying, you're fine, just get up, move along, like keep moving forward, it's all fine. Let alone the abandonment of either abuse, right? Abandoning that you are a sovereign being, you are your own entity, your own energy, and I'm constantly invading that and not respecting any of your boundaries that you don't even know about yet. But this, the subconscious condition of you're not enough, you're not okay. We're not going to acknowledge you. We're not going to see you because we can't handle that. We haven't done the work for ourselves.
This is the biggest thing,
right? And it's not about blaming them for not being able to acknowledge you because they didn't have this training. None of us have had this training.
Nope.
We don't know this. We're not aware of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing I always say is if you are a parent yourself, how you react or respond to your child's emotional needs shows how you react and respond to your own emotional needs. And most parents are quite reactive if a child, for example, shows anger. And anger is a beautiful emotion. This is why I work with anger. It's such a beautiful emotion. It shows you the core values and beliefs that you hold. It shows you where your no is, where it lives, what it is. It's protection. It's like, no, this is not serving us. This is not right for us. But as children, when they express anger, which they have a right to express anger if they didn't get the chocolate bar or they're not listened to in the moment, whatever it is, their need wasn't met, they feel angry about it, often it's then shunned. Because for most adults walking around, they haven't ever been taught that anger's okay. So they see anger in a little tiny body. It mirrors back the anger within themselves they haven't processed or they're pushing down unconsciously or consciously. And therefore, instead they want to stop that. They want to shut that down. They want to punish that. They want to push that away in the child form, not because of the child, but because it's a protection of what they haven't dealt with. And then that's what repeats the cycle. And that's why the child then abandons their own anger, because they learn it's not safe, it's wrong, it makes me this person. So they shut it down, they become an adult that does exactly the same, and the cycle repeats.
And the anger just grows.
The anger grows.
If you're not giving it an outlet, then it's like, okay, I'm angry, but I'm not allowed to express it. Or I have no ways, let alone healthy ways, to express it.
Yeah.
Then I just have to bottle it up until it explodes.
Yeah.
And it'll explode in the ways that you don't even expect, right? You like blow up on somebody for doing something really simple, like stepping in front of you in line to get groceries, or not recognizing you, or even seeing that you're there when they're wrapped up in their own world because you feel so abandoned and neglected in that moment. Like, see me, damn it, so I'm gonna scream it out. I mean, in my household, we just screamed all the time. It was like the way, and it's joked about, right?
Yeah.
I'm not yelling, I'm Italian. No, you're abusive.
Yep.
You don't realize
Let
it.
that one sit.
Yeah. You're not self-aware enough to recognize that that's unhealthy.
Yeah.
But it's not something that I'm going to repeat, I mean, we need to be the cycle breakers and stop it where we see it, where we recognize it. And to be able to communicate that to possibly people that don't have any interest in growing beyond that.
Yeah.
Just healing that for ourselves, not stepping into that role, not then yelling back. I spent the majority of my life screaming and yelling right back, and to no avail, No one ever gets heard when everybody's screaming.
Nope.
So nothing gets heard, nothing gets healed, and then we need to separate ourselves so much from what we experience in order to find that peace again, and then be able to slowly begin to rebuild. How do I communicate with people, Like, what is nonviolent communication? I didn't even know this was a thing before, 30-something years old. And then realizing, wow, that was really violent. It's like watching the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. It was like, in a court of law, it's deemed violent for someone to be throwing things in your presence. That's abuse.
Wait,
I would have thought, like, that's just normal. That's just like, that's how we react to things that piss us off. We just like smash something. And then to realize, wow, you could actually put this on trial and it would not be okay. It would be illegal even,
Crazy. And I think the thing with the cycle of emotions as well is when they're not addressed, when they're not recognized and even felt. Like, I ask many of the people I work with, what does anger actually feel like? Well, it feels like anger. Yeah, but what does it feel like in the body? Where do you notice it happening? Where is it rising up so you can recognize in that moment when you're feeling something that may be anger? But the problem is that when people repeat this cycle unconsciously, you said you get to the point where you explode in a fit of rage. It actually then reinforces what you were trying to get away from in the first place, which is the abandonment. Because when you shout at somebody, it's likely that person's going to leave in some form.
Right.
So then you just reinforce to yourself, look, anger's dangerous because it means I lose somebody, or I lose control, or I get aggressive, or whatever. And then you reinforce that abandonment wound all over again. Oof.
It's a cycle that just keeps repeating until we do something different, right?
Yeah.
So how do we do something different? We need to first recognize when we're repeating cycles, when we're having an adverse reaction to something, yeah? And then being present with it.
Yeah.
Actually asking ourselves those questions.
Yeah.
How
Even
does this feel?
I'd say I'd even go further back and say the first thing is to give yourself true permission and really sit with it, to allow yourself to feel the emotion first.
Yeah.
And then to explore in the body, what does anger actually feel like? Where does anger live? When you feel anger, where in the body are you feeling it, and what does it feel like? Can you describe it? Like, where does it start? I know for exactly, like in my body, when I know there's anger being held that's not being addressed. Because if it stays there for too long, it gets bigger and bigger, I can feel it, and then my nervous system goes into freeze because it cannot contain and hold that anger anymore.
Yeah.
So I'd say before even trying to acknowledge it in the moment, actually give yourself permission, or even just ask yourself, can I feel anger? And listen to the response. Because if you get a big hard no, there's your resistance, and then you have to sit with that resistance first from a compassionate place and work out why is that resistance there. And usually as we've dug deep, we find the resistance is protection. Protection stems from some fear of being overwhelmed, dying in the process of actually experiencing an emotion we've never been taught how to hold in our system.
Yeah, fear of something, right? It comes from like a lack or a scarcity or a victim. Like we are actually very afraid of being left alone.
Of course.
Yeah. And for me, it plays out more in sadness and leads into depression more so than anger. I feel like I was expressing anger for the first 30 years of my life. That was my reaction to it. I wasn't holding back, but I wasn't observing it either, right? Just letting it out. And that played out in my physical life as I was a distance runner. I just fucking ran. I ran around my whole town for hours a day just to let off that steam of otherwise I'm gonna murder someone. And then after playing all of that out, after going through a herniated disc, not being able to move my body in the same ways, because universe was trying to say, hey, you have this abandonment wound, you need to wake up to it, you need to realize it, you can't just keep running around the town avoiding this feeling, right? You can't just burn off this wound. You have to actually sit with it, you have to be still. Luckily I came into the yoga world from the need to really move my body. I took power vinyasa flow classes first, and I was like, yeah, this is great. It's using all of my muscles, and it's a great workout. This is awesome. Only 20 years later did I finally realize wow, this can actually calm me down. This actually has much more of a powerful effect on my energy levels. And yet still that next level was just a deep sadness of processing the grief of losing these parent figures, this core unit of a family that I never had. It just never was there. And I never felt loved. I never felt my needs were acknowledged on all levels: spiritual, physical, emotional, mental. So I always strive to be the best, do the best. It came out in my yoga practice every single day with rigidity, doing the same practices, the same breath work, until, I reached this point of massive transition where I'm still doing all these practices, I'm still meditating, I'm still working with therapists, and I still get really saddened by it. So I think that depression also comes from this massive not actually sitting with the feeling as much as I would like to say I've healthily processed my own abandonment. I'm still on that journey, and being able to sit with it and just weep in sadness over the loss of that love that I was never shown, never felt that acceptance or support that like who I am at my core is acknowledged and seen and is okay and is good for me to be and express myself, or how to. Can we talk about this? No, let's just shut up, you're bad, you're wrong. I don't accept you. You know, to the point of me needing to set a really firm boundary for myself and just saying, okay, no more. I'm not going to allow this into my life anymore. I think it's interesting, the two, I mean, they're so interconnected, right? Like depression and anger. It's like, I think you were saying it the other day, right?
It was interesting you say it, because I think our journeys are similar in so many ways, but different in so many ways, because my understanding of anger and, let's say, grief or sadness, obviously there's differences between the two, but predominantly each of us as humans tend to side more with the one or the other. So from what you're telling me, you sided more of the anger side, and what we call anger, we call is a stabilizing emotion, just like joy. It's very outwards. When you think of anger, it's very expressive, it's out there, it's setting a boundary, you're looking outwards to protect yourself. Same with joy, you're jumping around, you're laughing, you're joking. And grief and sadness is more the destabilizing, it's more like fear, it's the curling up into a fetal position, the victim sort of thing. And generally speaking, most people that I've worked with and most people on the planet will gravitate towards one or the other. And if they're in one space and not the other, that space is the protection for the other. So your anger, if you're out there being angry at this and pushing yourself to run and this, what you're actually doing is preventing yourself from looking inwards to the vulnerability of the smallness and the loss and the abandonment, the sadness, the shame, the grief, all of these things here, because you've got a wall out here. I know we've spoken a lot about narcissism, but that's very much the anger's outwards to protect yourself from being the vulnerable. And a lot of people, my journey was the other way around. My journey was, I'm the small, I'm the victim, there's a lot of grief, there's a lot of sadness. So I've had to work on accessing my anger to stabilize myself and figure out my boundaries. So it's interesting how humans tend to gravitate towards one or the other more. A lot of people, for example, when they say they're angry, I'll cry. And that shows you're more of the destabilizing, because anger is dangerous. So if you cry, it softens it, it smoothens that anger a little bit, it makes it more palatable for the outside, makes it more palatable for you. So it's interesting how you're talking, because it's a destabilizing, which is the making yourself smaller, getting into a fetal position, which is the sadness, and the anger is more stabilizing, the no, I'm not having this is my no, and that's the stabilizing. It keeps you stabilized in who you are. And we can either be one extreme, we want to bring them both together and recognize that actually when they work together, you can be vulnerable and you can also express healthy boundaries.
Yeah, I feel like they go in cycles, right? We do one or the other first, maybe, and we can come back to the alternate. I remember having a call with one of my Reiki master before I even left the States, like over 5 years ago. She just had me sit with my shame. And actually it might have been a coach, my first coach ever, who just said, okay, what do you want to do? You know, you're in that feeling, what do you want to do? You're witnessing yourself experiencing that emotion. What do you want to do with this? And I thought it would be beforehand that I would want to like break shit, that I would want to like, you know, throw plates against the wall and shoot things and punch things. And I just wanted to hug. I just wanted to soften, to give myself like love that I never really felt that was okay because of what I had experienced. I experienced the anger and the rage. I'd witnessed it. I had felt it given to me. And so connected with that from within as well. But then I just wanted to have that softness, that it was really surprising and eye-opening that that's what I wanted. That's what I needed more. And I think these things can go, you know, we all have cycles in our lives where we need one type of healing process more than another, and it's ever evolving, right? We might go through phases where we come back to needing to release anger in a healthy way, when we're ready to take a stand and set a boundary and do so in a powerful way that's not violent, right? There's a big difference between strength and abuse and violence.
I would say assertiveness over aggression. Assertiveness is the healthy. That's the healthy no. And there's aggression.
And then there's also that range or that balance with like sadness, experiencing your sadness, and then allowing it to overcome you into a depression, right?
To become you.
I'm experiencing this deep sadness. I'm processing this trauma, this emotion, and I'm giving it this space that I've chosen, and I'm allowing it to be this way, and I'm expressing through channels that I know that will receive it and will hear me and acknowledge it with me. And I'm setting a boundary there as well. I'm not allowing myself, because I value myself so much, to fall into something, right? I'm setting a boundary that I'm worthy of experiencing my emotions and my past objectively, so that I can also not fall prey to it, not be a victim again to this, this depression that I've always said I suffer from depression, or I struggle with my depression.
Words.
Yeah, but it takes like casting my own spell over it to just say, yes, I have had depression. I have allowed it, right? Because we allow it. And I think it's a crucial part of the process. If that is what you're experiencing, it's because you need to. And you can also look at it after the fact from a lens of, okay, what did that bring me? What did I allow in? What did I learn? And what do I want to continue with into the future in terms of, do I want to allow myself to go there again, or do I want to make an agreement with myself that, okay, when this happens again, when I start to feel this coming on, what's my action plan? I call this like a flare-up plan, right? Depression flare-up plan, like it's happening, just like with my spine. Herniation, or you're back into an acute phase, you do something, you sneeze, or you lift something improperly and you don't use the tools that you've learned. So then what? I'm in this phase of, oh my gosh, I'm back here again. So let's set up, right? What's the first step? What are we going to do? For me, it's going to be phone a friend, because it's always that outside of myself that helps to pull me out of it, right? And you've been very incremental in that process for me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, communities are definite. I always say that people are often re-traumatized because they experience the trauma or they experience the overwhelming event, and then immediately as human beings we are biologically wired for connection, so we turn around for that community. And in most places in the world right now, and because of how we've evolved as humans, there isn't that community there.
Yeah.
And so we get re-traumatized, or we become overwhelmed again, and we realize the isolation we're experiencing, because now not only do we have this that we find is too much in this moment for us to hold by ourselves, there is no one around or beside us that is able to also hold it with us. So we end up experiencing that double traumatization.
Yeah.
In that way, if I
the
do
isolation of, I'm recreating my own abandonment, right? I'm isolating myself so that it reinforces that comfort zone of, oh yeah, no one cares, I'm all alone, I can't be helped, this is my this is my fate, or I deserve this. It's like another way that we use to abuse ourselves, right? Amazing.
And also just, I would say, those little tiny voices. I mean, I'm very privy to the fact that I didn't realize until recently that not everybody has an inner critic. I don't have an internal dialogue saying these things. I have obviously insecurities and things, but I think it's also important, if you're hearing these particular voices that are saying, I'm not worthy, or I'm deserving of this horrible fate that's happened to me, is to also really root yourself, if you can, in understanding where those little voices are coming from, because I can guarantee they're all child consciousness of certain ages within your system. They probably have a place, they probably have a home, they still think they're their age in which they were created, and they will continue to unconsciously feed this narrative in the mind. So if I, for example, was to hear in my head, I'm not worthy of this, this is a protection. There's nothing else. The body and the mind have got one thing: to keep us safe. So that voice is not a voice that's there. This is why I think the mind has an awful rap. People say, silence the mind. The mind is working again. No, the mind is literally being fed by the messages of the body. And if the body is in a state of anxiety, of fear, of panic, of all this trauma that hasn't been dealt with, the mind is just trying to make logical sense, and these thoughts are coming up. So when we hear these voices like, I'm unworthy, really work out the root of where that's coming from, because that is a protection.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're not worthy, what is it protecting you from? It's protecting me from perhaps expanding my business, or perhaps getting on stage and singing in front of a group of people because there's shame that I'm trying to protect myself from feeling. So these voices are also, they're not working against us. There's not little demons in our head that are trying to plot to take us down. They're all stemming from something in here that is trying to protect us from something deeper, which is often shame, often fear, often the anger, sometimes the sadness, the powerlessness, the helplessness, the hopelessness we feel, which are all the trauma responses.
Yeah, that we just need to look at, right? Okay. This is a lot of people's resistance to meditation, is that like, oh, I can't sit in silence because then I can't stop my mind, right? All these thoughts are going to start flooding in, and I always respond to that with, that's a good thing. That's a necessary part of your process to witness all these thoughts that are flooding in. They need a space. They need a blank slate to actually speak to you, right? To say like, this is where I'm coming from, or this is, you know, just observing where the mind goes, what story you're brought back into, because it needs to come up. You're not going to sit in meditation for the first time and not experience like total bliss, right? And be able to like sit still, not fidget around, because it's not comfortable. And it's meant to not be, right? Because that's things that we haven't let come out. We haven't allowed ourselves to then go, oh, and then where am I feeling that in my body? And there's a lot of schools of thought around meditation that are like, okay, just like let it go, you know? But that part of it is nearly impossible when you're first starting out, to just let it go. I didn't even get into assessing, like, you know, you're saying like, ask yourself, where do I feel that? Where is that stemming from? So often these are subconscious, you know, stories that are playing out over and over, and they're just begging for a platform.
Be heard.
They're begging for us to just shut up and sit in silence so that they can come out, so they can take their little podium and be like, hey, I got something to say. I don't feel so great about this. Like, this really sucked. And then to allow ourselves to just look at that instead of this like very patriarchal, very like masculine energy of like, nope, see a thought, let it go. Nope, you know, like passing clouds. It's not going to be that fucking beautiful, you know? It's not going to be that serene unless you've done the work of actually observing it and questioning it and researching it and digging into your past and seeing, wow, this isn't even my voice. You know, there was a time in my life where this was Dad's voice, and now I'm doing it myself. Like, I'm repeating these things. I can take ownership of, now I'm the abuser, you know? I've become my own abuser because that's not even happening anymore. That's no longer anything that's present within me. It's another really beneficial thing to ask yourself, like, is that present? Like, is that here now? Or is this something, you know, oftentimes we go, I thought I was over that, right? I thought I already processed this enough. For most of us, these are brand new things, right? That we've never even seen. So these like insights and awareness that can come from meditation can be just like, whoa, that's interesting. Like, I didn't even know that was present in me now, right here, as I sit here in this beautiful, you know, reality of like this glorious beach, and I can sit here in meditation and something can come up that is brand new. That, you know, it could be lifetimes ago. It could be part of the collective experience that I'm channeling. It could be my own. It could be myself. It could be, you know, my best friend, a client. It's just so important to take that time to actually sit and allow those things to come in so that we can give them space and energy.
And the ironic thing is that a lot of people on this planet, through conditioning and just through being told to, when these thoughts come up, is just, as you said, suppress them, deny them, ignore them, push them to the side, let them go. But it's exactly like the body is just speaking to us. And if we have a pain, and we ignore that pain, it gets more and gets bigger and it gets greater and greater. And these little voices, these little children within us, these little pockets of our consciousness that have been kind of pushed to one side or neglected because of our need to fit into that good girl, good boy role, they're just going to speak louder and louder and louder and louder. So we're going to be battling more with those thoughts, because when we try to sweep that thought away, it's going to come up more, because now this little child is screaming at you, and then they're going to be screaming even louder, and they're having a tantrum, and now they're throwing stuff across the floor because they're not being heard. So the reality is, until we can stop and listen, it's just going to build up and up and up. And unfortunately, a lot of people in society, this is where, and there's a lot more than just this simplified version of what I'm about to say, but like why a lot of chronic diseases and a lot of people get into this huge spaces of really, really deep sort of mental, emotional dysfunctions and difficulties because things are ignored and ignored and ignored and ignored, and they build and they build and they build until the system can take it anymore. And then the immune system just cannot hold the brunt of that. The endocrine system, the lymphatic system, the brain structure, these things cannot just carry the weight of everything that's being ignored and suppressed.
Yeah.
And then it goes into chronic fatigue, it goes into any
herniated
sort of like
discs,
thing. Yeah,
you know?
anything, any disease, I think, any
you're sick, you have a fever, you have
any medical condition, in some way is rooted to the emotionality of that person. In some way, there's more facets to it. There's more. It's not as simplified as that, but I could guarantee that most things that people experience is there an emotionality behind it as well.
I feel that all, even down to accidents.
Yeah.
Like people will say, "Oh no, I got in a wreck. I got in a car accident. I got in a motorbike accident." Yeah, well, that was also just trying to open you to the possibility of another way to love yourself. You know, you could be all good, everything's fine, and then wham, you get hit by a car.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, how do you love yourself now? When you don't have the physical capacity to do the things that you were doing that helped you to establish that worth. Like, I'm worthy because I'm so successful at going for a run every day, going to the gym every day, and now my leg's fucked. It's in a cast. Now what do I do? Now you either slip into a depression because you can't do the things that fulfill you, or you can use it as an opportunity to recognize there's so much more to my own worth than having a functioning leg.
Yeah.
Right? This is energy that I need to be putting into other things for this time, right? Not forever, but it's just accepting, wow, I am not just my job. I am not just my exercise routine. I am so vast that, you know, I like to tell people, like, a paraplegic can do yoga, can meditate, can do extremely amazing things in this world. So we need to always consider, like, who are we being with ourselves despite things that our brain considers limitations, right? And what is the message that we need to look at? It's normally very, very, very simple, right? Just nourish yourself more, drink more water. You need more anti-inflammatories to help yourself heal through this. Just waking you up to little aspects of, you need to rest more. You just need to sleep for like a month. Right?
I'm up for this.
Yeah. I just reposted an Instagram post today. It's like all the astrological signs, and it's like Taurus. Sorry I didn't show up for the past 10 years. I was just sleeping.
Nice.
But I was healing, right? Like, I'm sorry I wasn't showing up in the same spaces the same way as before because I needed something else.
Yes.
It's not the same. I'm not the same person. We're not even the same beings after 7 years, right?
Nope.
We regenerate our whole being. So, like, let's bring our minds with us. Let's bring our emotions with us and recognize, like, okay, these I don't need anymore. They serve that purpose. This stuff, new territory. Oh, that's a little scary. But let me step into that with just as much fervor as I was, say, like, abusing myself in the gym every day for 3 hours, or, you know, working until 11 o'clock at night for me in New York City in fashion or in cosmetics, whatever the fuck it was, that's what I'm feeling like. Oh yeah, I'm the best. I'm so good at this. Really? What if we take that away? Then what are you? You know, who are you being in the world?
Absolutely. And I think there's something so liberating. There's something so terrifying and yet so liberating when you get past a certain point of taking radical responsibility for everything. Like, to begin with, a lot of people maybe even watching this in their journey may feel that it's safer for them to be in that victim space. And it's all I want to say is, always say as a disclaimer, I do believe to fully heal, you need to actually fully recognize that you were a victim in certain things. There is victimization for sure. But when we stay that small, it is a preservation, it is a protection. But there comes a point in the journey when you get to a stage where actually taking responsibility even for really fucking shitty things. Like, you're like, woof, okay, I'm not responsible for another person's behavior, but I am responsible for how I respond to that situation and what choices I make going forward.
Yes.
There's a big period of time where you get there and you're like, oh, I don't like this, I'd rather just slip back into those old patterns. And then there comes a point when you start to take responsibility, and you come to a part where I feel I am, and I'm sure you're at, where it's like, oh, there's so much freedom and grace and lightness in going, okay, I made a really shitty decision in that moment, but I recognize it and I hold myself accountable, and it's so much quicker to move through now, to take radical responsibility than it is to push the blame onto something else or somebody else, or to make myself smaller in order to try and like get away from something I've done or said that was not healthy for me or another person.
Yeah,
so
right. It like exponentiates the expansiveness when you can just notice it, own up to it, right? Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Like,
straight
or
away.
Not that I shouldn't have, but like I'm sorry for it, right?
Yeah.
I'm human. I make mistakes.
Yeah.
This was not right.
Yeah.
I apologize, and I'm not gonna like continuously hold that against myself or abuse myself with it. I'm just gonna acknowledge it. I'm responsible for that. I'm sorry that this, that you felt this way because of my action, my words, I don't want to do harm to others. I don't want to do harm to myself. It's not our nature.
Yes.
But when we do, okay, I can own it. But then the key is like, then I can move on from it. That I'm not like a sponge. I'm not like absorbing it all and then holding on to it. And I'm so full of it that I can't do anything else. I need to wring that shit out so that I can be lighter and like leave and go on to do something else and keep shortening that time between, situation that didn't feel good, to like, okay, I'm not gonna just react or I'm not gonna stew in it forever, but I'm just gonna say very plainly, that doesn't feel good, or like, I'm sorry that was awkward, or whatever it is, so that then I can continue with my life,
Yep, absolutely.
Speaking of which, it's damn hot.
It's so damn hot. I'm not complaining. Rainy season is upon us soon.
Not complaining about the heat or the sun. It's glorious. The water is high tide. We can jump in. It's beautiful blue. We are at this amazing resort on the beachside, Summer Salts in Koh Phangan. This is Phoenix Wildfyre. Would you like to speak to who Phoenix is?
She's the epitome of 4.5 years of intense healing work, healing that abandonment wound, healing the trauma, taking radical responsibility, liberating herself and becoming exactly who I always was, but had to unlearn who I became to then go back to who I always was, and that's me.
Coming home to yourself.
And all the other stuff in terms of what I do is not relevant. That's not me. That's what I do, and that's not relevant. I'm the embodiment of who I was always meant to be.
Hell yeah.
Woo!
Sorry.
That is one. I was kidding.
And I am Beth, channeling Priestess. And I am also fully embodied. I've taken all of my lessons from what my physical body mainly has told me about what I needed to process, that I channeled unbeknownst to me for a very long time. The messages that are coming in that I receive for myself, for others who have been on this same part of the journey, and that there is power in prayer. There is power in our words and our word choices, and coming from a deep wound of abandonment through verbal abuse. So having words used against me for so long, I'm redefining word choice and channeling that into, transmuting that into mantra, affirmations, prayer, and mostly self-talk. Like how I speak to myself has been my greatest lesson. Committing to speaking kindly to me, to others, non-violently. To just flip the script, right? To even hear the things that are coming at me, even when they are still abusive, negative, or the things that I hear from my past, or entities or demons, and to just go, oh, isn't that nice? Another opportunity to write poetry, to flip this, to turn this around. So I love, love, love working to support people on their holistic journey, this very highly influenced by spirit, a spiritual path, awakenings, through embodiment, through feeling your body, through knowing your limits of your body and your breath, and just being with that space and seeing where the mind comes in to try to take over and, like you were saying, to protect us, to try to keep us safe and keep us small, and just questioning that. Being in a space of objective inquiry about, oh, that's interesting that this is coming up now. What do I need right now in this moment to re-parent myself, to re-love myself back to a place where I can be regulated and then navigate my life the way that I want. So stay tuned to this space for
Beep, 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 beep. For robot dancing and
more
burnt noses.
love, healing.
Well, I wouldn't say love.
Well,
Tolerate.
I'll say love.
Yes.
I'm
love.
offering love and hugs and yeah. Thanks so much for chatting with me today,
You're welcome.
Phoenix Wildfyre.
I didn't set on fire, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
I think it's coming.
I'm about to.
I think I'm about to.
All right. Thanks again to Somersaults for allowing us this beautiful backdrop and this beautiful space to have these conversations. We'll be doing some yoga here coming up, some restorative, some personal practices with this insane view.
It's unreal.
Be well. Be love. Be the light that you are.
Cheesy.
Thanks so much for watching, for being here with us. We hope to see you again for more conversations around tough topics, and hope this perhaps shed some light on how you can move forward with your own abandonment wound to heal. Love you.